He had done it dozens of times before. Same airport, same line, same blue passport. He answered the officer's questions the same way he always had. Friendly, calm, nothing to hide. Then the officer asked him to step aside. They took him into a secondary room, sat him down, and placed a laptop in front of him. They wanted to see 5 years of his bank statements. Right there, at the border, no warning, no lawyer, no time to think. My name is Sarah, and I have been advising families through the immigration system for more than 20 years. I have heard from people at airports, at land border crossings, at consulates abroad. And what is happening right now with financial records and border entry is something I have not seen at this scale before. I need you to understand it, all of it, before you travel, before you send someone you love to travel, and before you assume that what happened last time will happen again next time. I know that for many of you, this sounds like something that happens to other people, people with complicated situations, people who have done something wrong. That is exactly what the man in that secondary inspection room thought too, right up until the moment he was sitting in it. The thing I have learned after 20 years is that the border is not a place where only complicated cases get complicated. It is a place where any case can become complicated very quickly with very little warning. So let me be your guide through this, not to frighten you, to prepare you. Because preparation is the only thing that actually works at the border. Let me start with what is actually happening, not the version people are guessing at, but what is changing at the institutional level and what it means in practical terms for you. U.S. Customs and Border Protection, the federal agency, commonly called CBP, that controls who enters the United States at every port of entry, including airports, seaports, and land crossings, has expanded what it considers relevant to an admissibility determination. Admissibility just means whether the officer is going to let you in. When you arrive at a U.S. port of entry, a CBP officer has broad authority to ask for documents, review financial information, and make a decision about whether your entry is consistent with your stated purpose. What is new, and what is different from even a few years ago, is that CBP officers are increasingly asking travelers, particularly those on non-immigrant visas like tourist visas, student visas, and certain business visas, to provide evidence of financial standing going back 5 years. That means bank statements, account histories, records of income, savings, and spending patterns. Officers want to see whether your finances are consistent with what you said your purpose of travel is, and whether there is anything in your financial history that suggests you might not leave the country when you are supposed to. The legal authority for this is not new. CBP has always had the right to inspect documents at the border. What is new is how aggressively and how broadly that authority is being applied right now. The difference between what the law permits and what the agency actually does on a given day can be very wide. And right now, that gap has narrowed significantly. Here is something that surprises people when I explain it. When you are at a port of entry, standing at a border crossing or walking off a plane, you are in a legal space that operates differently from the rest of the country. The Fourth Amendment protections against unreasonable search, the constitutional rule that generally requires police to have a warrant or specific cause before searching you, apply differently at the border. Courts have repeatedly upheld CBP's authority to conduct searches and ask for documents at ports of entry without the same standard required elsewhere. This does not mean you have no rights. You do. But understanding where you are legally changes how you should prepare. And here is the part most people do not realize until it is too late. So stay with me. Now let me walk through what people are saying about this in their community groups, their family chats, the videos they are sharing. Because some of what is going around will get people into trouble if they rely on it. The first thing I keep hearing is, this only applies to people coming from certain countries. That is not accurate. While it is true that CBP officers may apply additional scrutiny to travelers from certain regions based on specific risk categories, the request for financial documentation has been documented at ports of entry for travelers from many different countries, including close U.S. allies. Where you are from does not protect you from this. Your visa category, your travel history, and what the officer sees in front of them all matter more than your nationality in this specific context. The next one I need to address is, if you have a valid visa, they have to let you in. A visa, the stamp or sticker in your passport that a U.S. consulate abroad places there, is permission to travel to the United States and request entry. It is not a guarantee of entry. The CBP officer at the port of entry makes a separate and independent decision about whether to admit you. A valid visa means the consulate found no reason to deny travel. It does not bind the CBP officer at the border. These are two different decisions made by two different parts of the government. I also hear this one constantly. Just show them whatever they ask for. Cooperating fully means they have to let you in. Cooperation is important, and I want to be clear about that. But cooperation does not mean consenting to everything without understanding what you are consenting to. There is a difference between answering questions honestly and handing over access to your personal device, your cloud accounts, or documents that go beyond what the officer has legal authority to demand. You can be cooperative and still ask what specific authority the officer is relying on for a particular request. And the fourth rumor I need to correct: if they deny you entry once, you can just reapply for the visa and try again. A denial at a port of entry, being turned back at the border, creates a record. That record follows you. It can affect future visa applications, future admissibility decisions, and in some cases can trigger a bar, a legal period during which you are not permitted to apply for entry. A single bad experience at the border is not just a bad day. It can have consequences that extend for years. Let me now talk about the hidden traps, the ones that careful, prepared, well-intentioned people walk into because nobody told them the rules before they got there. The first hidden trap is the device trap. CBP officers have authority to request access to electronic devices at the border, including phones and laptops. If your device contains financial information, communications about your reasons for travel, or anything that could raise questions about your intentions, that information is visible. Many travelers do not think about what is on their phone when they board a plane. Think about it now, before you travel. You have options, including traveling with a clean device, that are legal and reasonable. But those options only exist if you plan ahead. The second hidden trap is the inconsistency trap. If what you told the consulate when you applied for your visa does not match what you tell CBP at the border, even in small ways, even accidentally, that inconsistency becomes a red flag. The systems talk to each other. The officer at the border can see your visa application. If your stated purpose of travel shifted, or if your financial situation looks different from what you described during the visa process, that gap will be noticed. The third hidden trap is the cash trap. Travelers carrying $10,000 or more in cash, or the equivalent in other currencies or monetary instruments, are legally required to declare that amount at the border. This is not a new rule, but what is new is the level of scrutiny being applied to financial patterns even below that threshold. Large cash withdrawals in the weeks before travel, or a financial history that does not match your stated income, can generate questions even if you declared everything properly. The fourth hidden trap is the family money trap. Many families in immigrant communities support each other financially. Parents send money to children abroad. Adult children send money home. Relatives help each other with large purchases. These patterns of family financial support, when they appear in bank statements, can sometimes look irregular to an officer who does not understand the context. Unexplained large deposits or withdrawals are questions waiting to happen. If your statements include transfers that need context, have a simple, honest, documented explanation ready. I want to tell you about someone I will call Nadia. Nadia had a B2 tourist visa, the standard visitor visa for people traveling to the United States for leisure or to visit family, and had entered the country several times without incident. On her most recent trip, she was pulled into secondary inspection. The officer asked her to produce her last 5 years of bank records. Nadia had them on her phone. What the officer saw was a series of large transfers from a family member abroad, money her brother had sent her to help cover a medical expense. There was no document explaining what those transfers were for. The officer noted an inconsistency between her stated financial situation and the pattern of large incoming transfers. Nadia was admitted, but her visa was annotated, meaning a note was added to her record. And her next entry was significantly more difficult. I share Nadia's story because it is the kind of thing nobody warns you about until it has already happened. The details are drawn from real situations but do not identify any specific person. Now, what you are about to hear is the part that can actually protect you. Please do not skip it. Let me speak directly to the specific groups of people watching this, because your situation is different depending on who you are and why you travel. If you are a parent or grandparent who visits the United States regularly on a tourist visa to spend time with your family, and you stay for extended periods close to the visa limit, which for a B2 tourist visa is generally up to 6 months at a time, you are in a higher scrutiny category right now. Officers are paying close attention to whether extended visits suggest you may be living here rather than visiting. Have documentation of your life and ties to your home country, a lease, utility bills in your name, evidence of regular activity in your home country that requires your presence. If you are a student on an F1 visa, the visa for people enrolled at U.S. colleges and universities, and you are returning from a trip abroad, your financial documentation should align with what your institution reported as your funding source when you were admitted. If your parents support you, have documentation of that. If you received a scholarship, have that paperwork accessible. Inconsistency between your stated funding source and your actual bank history creates questions. If you send money to family members outside the United States regularly, which is called a remittance, meaning a transfer of money to someone in another country, those transfers will appear in your bank statements. They are legal. They are common. But if an officer asks about them, a clear and simple explanation of who the recipient is and why you send the money will serve you far better than uncertainty or evasion. If you are a U.S. citizen or green card holder traveling with a family member who is on a non-immigrant visa, meaning a visa that is not permanent residency, understand that at the port of entry you will be processed separately. You cannot speak for them at the inspection. Prepare them independently. Make sure they have their own documents, their own explanation of their financial history, and their own understanding of what is likely to be asked. If you are a business traveler entering on a B1 business visa or through the Visa Waiver Program, which allows citizens of certain countries to visit the United States for up to 90 days without a visa for business or tourism, be prepared for questions about who is paying for your trip and what the financial relationship is between you and the U.S. company you are visiting. Have a letter from your employer or the U.S. host company on hand. Here is what to do right now, before your next trip, before you book a ticket, before you send anyone you love to board a plane. First, pull your last 5 years of bank statements and review them yourself. Look for large or irregular transfers, unexplained deposits, or patterns that might look unusual to someone who does not know your family's financial history. Write down a simple explanation for anything that stands out. Second, organize your financial documentation into a travel file. This does not need to be elaborate. A folder, physical or digital, with your statements, any relevant receipts or explanations, and evidence of your financial ties to your home country is enough to show that you are prepared and have nothing to hide. Third, if you have been sending or receiving large family transfers, write a brief, honest note to yourself explaining each one. Not for the officer. You are not required to submit prepared documents, but so that if you are asked, your answer is immediate, clear, and consistent. Fourth, check whether your visa still accurately reflects your current situation. If your financial circumstances, your employer, your family situation, or your reason for travel has changed significantly since your visa was issued, talk to an immigration attorney before your next entry. A discrepancy between the visa record and your current reality is exactly the kind of thing that generates a secondary inspection. Fifth, If you are traveling with a personal device that contains sensitive financial information or personal communications you consider private, speak with an attorney before travel about your options. Traveling with a device that has been cleared of non-essential information is legal. Refusing to hand over a device is also a right, but it may result in the device being held or your admission being denied. Know your options in advance so you are not making that decision under pressure at a border crossing. Sixth, if you are pulled into secondary inspection, remain calm and cooperative. Answer questions honestly. But if at any point you are asked to sign a document, ask to have an attorney present before you sign anything. You have that right. Signing a document you do not understand at a port of entry can have consequences that outlast the trip. I need to warn you about something before we go any further. There are people right now, on social media, in community groups, advertising in immigrant neighborhoods, who are promising to help you prepare bank statements that will pass CBP review. They are offering to create documentation, alter records, or arrange financial histories that look clean. Do not go near these people. Presenting fraudulent financial documents at a U.S. port of entry is a federal crime that can result in permanent inadmissibility, meaning you could be barred from ever entering the United States again, as well as criminal prosecution. No amount of money is worth that risk. And the people making these offers will disappear the moment there is trouble, leaving you to face the consequences alone. I want to tell you about someone I will call David. David was nervous about an upcoming visit because his bank statements showed a period of irregular income. He had been between jobs. A contact in his community told him he could arrange cleaner-looking documentation for a fee. David, worried about being turned away, paid for it. He was caught at the border. He was turned back. A finding of document fraud was entered in his record. The visa he had held for years was revoked. He has not been able to return to see his family since. I tell David's story because I want you to feel the weight of what that decision cost him. The details are illustrative of real situations and do not identify any specific individual. If you are a U.S. citizen or lawful permanent resident, and you have a family member whose travel has been affected by an action at the border, an annotation on their visa record, a denial of entry, a hold on their case, your congressional representative's constituent services office is a resource worth using. This is the local office of your elected representative in the U.S. House or Senate. Their constituent services staff can contact CBP and other agencies to make formal inquiries about cases that have stalled or where the record appears to contain an error. They cannot override legal decisions. But a congressional inquiry sometimes moves paperwork that has been frozen, and it creates an official record that someone is paying attention to the case. Find your representative at house.gov by entering your zip code. Before I tell you what you still control, I want to name something honestly. The uncertainty of not knowing whether your next entry will be smooth, of planning a trip and not being sure whether you will actually get through, is genuinely hard. It disrupts plans. It affects families. It makes people who have done nothing wrong feel like they are suspects. That experience is real, and it is not fair. I am not going to pretend otherwise. But what I know after 20 years is that the families who come through these moments best are the ones who respond to the uncertainty with preparation rather than avoidance. You cannot control what the officer asks. You can control what you have ready when they ask it. Here is what belongs to you. You have the right to remain silent beyond basic identification questions at a port of entry, though exercising that right may affect the officer's decision about admitting you. You have the right to an attorney, though that right applies differently at the border than inside the country, and you may not be able to call one before initial questions are answered. You have the right to refuse to sign documents you have not read. You have the right to ask what legal authority the officer is relying on for a specific request. And you have the right to request the specific reason for any denial in writing. These are not adversarial acts. They are tools. Use them. Here is what I want you to hold on to. I have watched immigration policy move in cycles my entire career. Tighter, then looser, then tighter again. The current environment is one of the stricter ones I have seen, but the law, the actual statutes, the actual rights, the actual appeals processes has not been rewritten. What has changed is how quickly and how thoroughly the rules are being applied. That means the people who are best positioned right now are not the ones who avoid the system, but the ones who understand it well enough to move through it correctly. The man I described at the beginning of this, the one who was asked for 5 years of bank records at the airport, he was admitted. It took time. It was uncomfortable. But he had his statements. He had honest explanations for everything in them. And he walked out. Preparation is not a guarantee, but it is the closest thing to one that this system allows. If you have a question about your specific situation, a travel history, a financial pattern you are worried about, a visa category, a past border experience, leave it in the comments below. I read every one of them. I respond when I can, and the questions that come up most often shape what I cover next. Your question may be the thing that helps the next person in line. Travel carefully, prepare thoroughly, and know that someone who has seen this system from the inside is paying attention to what is happening and is going to keep telling you the truth about it.